Hi everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. It is Thursday, May 7th. Happy full moon in Scorpio, everyone. So today we're going to take a look at the full moon in Scorpio and give you a few ideas about what you can expect, as well as a few suggestions about how to navigate this full moon energy. So let's go ahead and take a look. Now, this full moon is really brought to you by Mars, and Mars is in a very specific situation right now, a very specific situation that is in the process of changing. And that is what this full moon is all about. So I've broken it down to just the traditional 7 planets right now, just to give you a very simple overview of what's happening. And I find that that is often the most effective way of sort of capturing the most essential meaning of a full moon or a new moon, or sometimes eclipses or any transit. But the moon cycles in particular can really help to simplify things. So what do we got? Well, it's always spotlight on whatever sign the moon is in. And when the moon is in any sign other than Cancer or Taurus, where it is exalted or in its own domicile, then you have to look at where the host is to get a sense of what's happening. Think about it like this, and I've said this lots of times before. The moon, or any planet in a sign other than its own, is basically a house guest. Its ruler, or its host, is the planet that rules that sign that it is in. You have to look at where that planet is located and what kind of relationship it has, in this case, to the moon, in order to understand what's going on. Sort of like saying, I'm going to go over to your house for dinner, and what you're serving totally depends on what kind of mood you're in or what you're dealing with at the moment. If you're totally overwhelmed, I might get a bag of microwave popcorn and no dinner at all, right? May not be that bad. I like microwave popcorn. But anyway, so if you, on the other hand, are in a really good space, maybe I'll have, like, a 5-course meal or something like that. So right now, the full moon is in Scorpio, which was the traditional sign of the moon's fall. And the reason for that is that the moon and Mars have a difficult relationship with one another, archetypally speaking. Mars is also in its fall in Cancer, the moon sign. So think about it like this. When you have the baby in the womb, that's a moon thing. When you have a Mars thing, it's the cutting of the umbilical cord. And that involves some screaming and some trauma, right? There's, like, was my kids came into the world, I cut the umbilical cord for both of them. When, they both came into the world, it was like, you know, compared to the union of the womb, coming into the world of individuation is a harsh moment of separation and of cord cutting. So a simple way of understanding the difficulty between the moon and Mars can be understood by just thinking about that idea of the union of the baby and the mother versus the separation, and the pain involved in birthing, as well as the pain involved in becoming more of an individual. But it's deeper than that. There's a lot more. For example, the moon loves homeostasis. Mars loves violence. The moon is the body. Mars is surgery. Lots of things like that. Moon in Scorpio is not at all bad. If you have a moon in Scorpio, you should not feel bad about it or anything like that. But the basic meaning of the moon in Scorpio is often that there will be some element of difficulty, or let's say challenge or confrontation or hostility or intensity that will be experienced. And sometimes it becomes quite emotional in Scorpio, which is a water sign that often really gets into the emotional body. So first of all, any full moon in Scorpio can be a challenge. How we use that challenge, what we make of it, that there's such a wide variety of people out there who have expressed this full moon so beautifully in their life. So again, it's nothing to feel bad about, but it does bring difficulties. And what we know about those difficulties is archetypal. It's just a moon Mars thing. But then specifically, it's where is Mars? What is Mars doing? So in this case, what is Mars doing? Well, Mars is culminating right now in Saturn's sign of Aquarius, which also puts it into what are called the bounds of Saturn. So it's super Saturny Mars right now. Mars is really constrained and confined by Saturn. That's not the worst thing in the world. It's like, cramming for an SAT and ending up getting a 15 or 1600 or whatever the top score is. Or it could be like the pressure needed to make a diamond, or it could be the pressure cooker of a deadline that ends up getting someone nominated for some kind of prize or award. Like a newspaper that has to work on a deadline, they crack a big story, and even though everyone is needing trauma therapy afterwards, they get the Pulitzer for best newspaper or whatever. I don't know if they get Pulitzers for newspapers. I think they do. Anyway, so that's a Mars-Saturn dynamic, working under pressure. In fact, if you think of that song, was it Queen, I think, sang Under Pressure? Was it maybe with Bowie as well? So yeah, under pressure. This is a Mars that is under pressure. It has been in Saturn's up in Saturn's homes for a while. Now it's exalted in Capricorn, but just to give you a sense of how long Mars has been playing around in the domain of Saturn, check this out. So we go forward to there's Saturn, or excuse me, Mars's entrance into Capricorn, Saturn's home, February 16th. February 16th. That's the beginning of the year. We're in May now, right? And we still have Mars in a Saturn-ruled sign. Now, of course, Mars was exalted in Capricorn, a little bit better place for it than Aquarius, but just, gives you a sense of exactly what you're dealing with. So anyway, let's bring it back up to the present. Now, at present, Mars is just about to leave the sign of Aquarius where Saturn will no longer have power over it. Why is this significant? Because you really have a Mars right now that's not working under, it's almost like Mars is more like Saturn than Mars. And that's true not only because Mars is in Saturn's sign, because it's been in Saturn's sign for a long time, and because it's currently in the bound of Saturn as it's culminating in Aquarius. Those anaretic last degrees of signs are all ruled. Their bound rulers are malefics, Mars or Saturn. And so you just get this more constrained, confined, it's disciplined, it's hardworking Mars, but it's just on the brink of breaking out of Saturn's clutches and moving into watery, double-bodied sign, out of a fixed sign, right? And once it moves into that double-bodied water sign, things become a lot more fluid, things move quicker. Yeah, there's more changeability. And then, of course, it's really interesting that change is going to occur right after the moon goes through its last quarter phase. After the full moon, moon will go through its last quarter phase in Aquarius, Saturn sign, and then join with Mars in Pisces, the moon will, right after Mars has moved into Pisces. And you can see that happening on, the 12th into the 13th. So that, you can see, here's the, you can see it right there. So the 12th into the 13th, about a week from right now, next Wednesday, Thursday, you've got the moon in Saturn's sign, and you've got Mars just breaking into the water sign where it is now in Jupiter's home, getting out of Saturn's home and into Jupiter's home. It's a lot better, if not for the fact that Jupiter is also all kinds of jacked up right now in Saturn's sign. Jupiter's in its fall in Saturn's sign. So it's an interesting dynamic. Mars is going to get a lot more free within about a week of the full moon, and a lot more fluid and changeable and dynamic, and generally more oriented towards the hospitable, benefic, expansive qualities of Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's still going to be dishing up a side of Saturn because it's in its fall in Saturn's sign, but this is a Mars that's on the brink of a breakthrough. Now, take that into account when looking at the full moon. And remember that the full moon is also moving through a square to Mars, hosted by Mars, moving through a square to Mars, a square to Saturn. So these are two of the squares that are present during the orb of the full moon from the time it enters Scorpio. What does that mean? Well, it means that the moon is in a fluid sign that wants to move and act and do Mars-like stuff that is more intense, action-oriented, potentially hostile, or even confrontational. But it's also just a moon that wants to break free of confines. And yet Mars is really hemmed in right now. Now that matches probably a lot of the frustration that many of us are feeling. But the good news is that for a week from the full moon, there is a breakthrough. So the way that I'm reading this full moon is like this, a couple of tips. Let me just clear all of that now. So a couple of tips. One is, if you're feeling extra pent up, frustrated, think of it as, there's a hexagram in the I Ching that depicts a fox trying to cross a river. And it says, a couple of steps right before the end, the fox gets anxious because that far shore is so close in sight that the fox tries to jump the last two steps and falls in the river. So when nearing completion, don't pick up the pace, don't rush, don't lose your patience. Full moons represent completion. The last quarter moon that's happening right as Mars shifts signs represents letting go of something, dissolution, surrender, the full moon to last quarter of this month has this feeling of if you are patient, you will be rewarded. If you are methodical and you work within constraints, there will be some kind of breakthrough. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean going back to work or out in the world. I mean, many of us will probably, I don't know, a lot of people will probably still be doing social distancing for quite a while, maybe into June or July. I have no idea. But my point is that at least emotionally or personally, in our interior space, that feeling of being pent up, we are on the brink of seeing some movement and some dynamism, but there's going to be a temptation to, like, just kind of bust through something potentially prematurely, or with a degree of, like, you know, rebelliousness, or just an unnecessary aura of conflict and hostility. So we have to be really careful of that around this full moon time. It's also a potential moment where there's what I like to call like an end level boss. It's like the last quarter likes to complete things and finish things and let go of things. Between full moon and last quarter over the next week, it's like there's this intense need to, like, finish something. And it could be or letting go of something internally. So when you're feeling that, the point is just let it fall off from you naturally. Don't try to push it. So this is kind of I thought of this and I was thinking of saying it, and then I was like, I shouldn't, and now I'm feeling like I should. Anyway, so it's like potty training my girls, and it's really funny to see, like, a little kid learning to, to take a poop, right? Basically, because she's like, I've got to go. And I'm like, okay, great. And it's all like a big thing. Like, okay, good. Bring her in. She's got her little seat, the whole thing. It's all set up really good. And then she starts pushing and, like, turning, like, beet red. And we're like, okay, no. Like, you don't push that hard. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, it might not be time yet. It might not be time. You could break something. You could tear something, So I just was thinking of that. Sorry, you can see, like, where my head is at. Quarantine and parenting and, like, astrology all all at once. Anyway, so the Scorpio moon feels like it needs to expel something, purge something, eliminate something. And that's why I was thinking of that's why this particular image came up. But anyway, the moral of the story is don't push your poop out metaphorically right now too hard, or you might tear. So sorry, that's really gross. Anyway, that's the idea, though, behind this last quarter moon. You will get through the release. There will be that sense of breakthrough. Mars is moving into a more fluid Jupiter-ruled sign after a long stint of Saturn. This full moon is sponsored by that Mars that wants to break through. You're almost there. You've got like a week to go. I think that's the message of this full moon. Also, don't be surprised if you're dealing with people who have some almost irrational level of impatience around you. Hold space for them. Let's be good to each other, and let's recognize that we're blessed or fortunate to know what the astrological energies are at any given moment. Then we're in the position to be compassionate and patient with people who don't understand them and who are maybe being, carried along by them in ways that are relatively more unconscious. So that's the benefit spiritually of studying astrology, is that, why do we do this? We do it so that we can learn to move with the currents of creation, rather than seeing ourselves apart from them and struggling with them. It's a bit like each soul is moving down a river in life. And as we awaken, we gradually realize, oh, the currents are carrying me. And we say, I have some agency here. I can use my arms and legs to steer a little bit. The currents are still there. The material energies are still there. But I'm a spiritual being. I have agency, and I can direct myself a little bit. Studying astrology helps us to become aware of what those energies are at any given time, which is necessary. We need that information to be able to understand what we're dealing with as we are learning how to cultivate free will. It's funny, a lot of people complain about, ancient astrology or astrology in general. They'll say, like, I don't want to know because, I believe in my freedom. It's like, well, I do too, but I'd like to know how to drive a car before I get in it and drive it. Or I'd like to know what the weather is before going out and exercising my free will. Should I bring an umbrella? Because that's going to be an important part of, like, how I navigate downtown if I have some errands to run. You know what I mean? So by studying these things, we're really learning, okay, here's what it is. It's not here to mess us up any more than the rain is here to purposely mess us up. These are just forces flowing along naturally from time immemorial in cycles and circles that are mind-blowing to study. When you find yourself amidst these cycles and circles, when you reflect upon them, when you consciously interact with them, and when you work to not be dominated by them and work to see them at work in others in your life, what you're really doing is learning to see divinity in everything. And then our agency comes alive. Our agency is not defined by how free we can be from anything and everything else that influences us. Our freedom is defined by how well we can make, the best choices in cooperation with the forces and elements that are all around us. Anyway, that was a free sidebar brought to you by the full moon in Scorpio. So, you can also just remember that in your week ahead, your mission is to, flow with the mounting pressures and tensions and intensity that you're feeling, trusting that the breakthrough will happen on its own, especially if I pay attention to the subtler energies that that make me feel like I need to go do something right now, and it's probably just a little too soon. So trust the process. I'd love to hear from you guys, hear your stories, hear how you're doing. Please leave your comments in the comments section. There are lots of other ways that the moon in Scorpio as a full moon can show up. So please tell me how it's showing up for you. Share your insights with others. I'd love to hear from you guys. All right. So we'll see you with more soon. And I hope you have a great full moon. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.